Hey everyone, welcome to the Brockton Bay Chronicles. My name's Keith. With me as always is my friend and first-time worm reader, Andy. Hey man, what's going on?
Oh, not a whole lot. Was happy to have the long weekend. But work stuff made up for it. Seems like we packed 5 days of work into 4 days anyway. But this time around, get to shift away from real world stuff into some usually more entertaining, sometimes pretty grim stuff in Worm. But we'll be reviewing Arc 15 Colony, chapters 6 to 8, and the third bonus interlude. As far as new business, just to let you know, we're saving the questions and comments for next episode.
That's correct. And since we have nothing else new going on, we'll dive right into our review. Picking up Arc 15, Chapter 6. And we're back with Flechette, Parian, and Skitter. This is right after Skitter has let her cockiness end up having her get impaled by Flechette. Allowing Flechette to take advantage of her. Flechette pins her other arm through her costume to the floor. So Flechette's got the upper hand, and Skitter tries to begin some negotiation. Her ultimate goal is to convince Parian to join the Undersiders, to join Coil's alliance. Flechette is obviously very skeptical. This is another one of those opportunities to see what Skitter looks like through the eyes of another person. It's not a POV, but everything Flechette, these accusations and her misgivings about the validity of or the sincerity of Skitter's words, they ring true. Flechette has reason to be cautious about everything and to doubt everything Skitter says.
That's a great point. First off, I did want to say, though, that the visual image I kind of got with Skitter being pinned down was like those things you used to see in biology class where the different specimens of bugs are pinned to the cardboard with a little label. So it's
very
like,
good.
dang, that's harsh, but
I wonder if that's a subtle subtle bit of imagery from Wildbow. That's purposeful.
I don't know. It could be, but man, it was as if your little beetle you had stuck to the wall could talk to you and say, "Hey, man, I'm kind of tired of being on this cardboard." Anyway, so as a reader, you rarely get that chance. You know, you're kind of in some kind of path that the author's taking you down, and it's rare that you get that other perspective of somebody saying, all right, well, I have been on the other side of these events, or I've heard about some of these events, been in some of these events, and this is what I've formed. This is the opinion that I have of you. And it's not a very good opinion. And so you can, kind of tap dance around and try to spin your tail here, but I'm not necessarily buying it because what I've got kind of all lines up too. This could be a valid explanation that I've come up with. So it's really interesting counterposition there.
Yeah, because I mean, at this point in the story, if you're a hero, I mean, if you're as Flechette is, she's on loan from, I believe it's New York is her base of operations. And she's trying to help stand up the wards in Brockton Bay. All you know is that the Undersiders and Skitter have gotten more and more powerful as the city has degraded. And so, yeah, why would you take anything she says at face value? And then Skitter, she has the audacity to get indignant when Flechette is skeptical.
Yeah, it reminded me a little bit, though, of I don't know if you've watched the Jack Ryan series on Amazon. But
it's on my list.
Okay. There's one scene where it's that kind of the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
And, it's kind of like, yeah, I get Flechette being mad at the Undersiders and concerned about their strength and power, but they did take on Slaughterhouse 9. So
true.
maybe cut them a little slack. I mean, it's in their best interest to survive too, the Undersiders, that is, but they could have just left. I mean, they didn't have to try to take them on. So I don't know. This is another one of those cases where it's a little bit of up on her high horse, I think, with Flechette. And that's kind of comes with the territory, I think. As we get through into the interlude, we start looking at the idea of, all right, people are coming online with powers. You're kind of got two choices, two ways to go, and there's that old adage, power corrupts.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people are probably going to go villain. The people who don't are like, I could be making serious cash too, but I'm trying to be good here. So you are definitely not making me happy being a villain. So I get it, but I just wish they would get a little more credit for taking on the Slaughterhouse Nine. But
Skitter does relate to Flechette what happened with the Nine and what happened with Armsmaster and that whole deal that went down immediately after the Leviathan fight. Flechette doesn't know some of the particulars of what happened there. As we get a little further into the chapter, that's when Skitter makes her offer to Parian. Here, let me offer you some money. Join our alliance. We can get your people treated. Parian wants nothing to do with it. Again, she's wanting to be Switzerland. She wants none of this. She's not a combatant. Her whole concern is helping take care of her friends and family who have been butchered and abused by the Slaughterhouse Nine. Flechette is in her ear as a friend, and it's like, no, you can't trust this girl. Why are you listening to her? Skitter successfully, at least sows at this point in the chapter, sows some seeds of doubt in Parian, and those seeds begin to sprout a couple of chapters later.
I'd agree with that. I also think it's pretty impressive that, skewered the way that she is, Skitter is still able to kind of maintain her composure. And I guess if I was in Parian's shoes, that might go a little way toward convincing me that she was being authentic. And I also like the way that she uses all of her bugs and stuff to get the phone out.
Yeah.
That was pretty slick. So
yeah. Meanwhile, while let's not forget that this whole thing Skitter's doing behind Ballistic's back. He's outside rampaging in Dolltown. He's taking down buildings a little further away, but they can hear this damage that's going on outside. So she's taking a chance, really trying to save. Obviously, she didn't know Flechette was going to be there, but she's trying to save Parian some pain. So that was you can't blame her, I guess, for trying to take the opportunity to save lives and to bring her into the fold.
Oh, for sure. Skitter witnessed firsthand the horrible things that the Slaughterhouse Nine did to these people. And I'm sure, well, and she even says she has a sense of guilt, even though it wasn't really her fault, that these things, if they hadn't engaged, if they had just, given up people to join the Slaughterhouse Nine or whatever, then, this stuff probably wouldn't have happened or might not happen the same way. And so she's trying to make up for that and help Parian out and trying to help out their overall mission. And yeah, the relationship with Ballistic is a little weird, and Skitter, I think, had a hard time kind of getting the vibe from him. One minute he's really surly, and the next minute he's kind of opening up a little bit, but not very much. And so he and Skitter are on the same team, sort of, but she, I think, thinks of him as pretty much a rogue element. So she's trying to do it her way. But yeah, I thought I got an interesting mental picture of, this quiet room where people are talking, and then all of a sudden you hear this building getting demolished. Oh, he's over there. All right, I guess I still have some time. And then dust settles, they get back to talking again. It's kind of like, eating lunch outside of an airport or something where you got to stop every couple seconds as a plane goes overhead.
Right. So Skitter reaches out to, I believe it's she calls home base and she's talking to who picks up. I forget. It's either Sierra or Charlotte, and she has her go upstairs to the safe that Skitter has a lot of cash in, and she gives this money to Perry and is like, "Hey, look, leave the city. This place is done for. The money's yours, no strings attached. Go out, get your family taken care of." Even at that point, I kind of wondered with the money that she was offering, these poor people have gotten this butchery done to them. I didn't think it was going to be enough cash for her to for Perry to get all of her friends and family taken care of. But it was a good gesture, an honest gesture on her part. Flechette actually at one point seemed hurt by the fact that Perry essentially told her to stand down.
Yeah, I think, like you said, Harrian's trying to be Switzerland, and people who are, pretty passionate about the side they're on aren't going to get that.
Right.
They're going to say, obviously, you should join the good guys, and you should never listen to a villain. And so, yeah, Flechette definitely is kind of ticked off by the whole thing that it's even an option. And I think again, there's that little bit of aspect that said it's like the policeman who takes down the counterfeiter who's driving the Lamborghini. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
wait a minute, I'm going to go back to the office and switch into my Ford Focus, and here I am trying to keep people safe, and you're doing your thing and living the high life. So, I'm sure Flechette would have helped out monetarily if she could have with Period, but she doesn't have a criminal enterprise the way Skitter does. So that's got to sting a little bit too.
Very true. Yeah. Skitter does arrange a pickup for Perry to go get the money. And the two ladies with her friends leave. Again, after Flechette has pinned her other arm to the ground. So now Skitter is stuck there and makes the effort to try to get herself released from the floor. And we got kind of a cool description as Skitter removes the spike from the floor, and how the spike has anything that touched the little anything that touched the dart that was securing her to the floor had bonded to the dart. So Flechette's power Flechette's power is really pretty cool, I think.
Definitely. Yeah. And I didn't think of it or remembered it that well. And then when there is this kind of bonding going on, and especially as it gets more grim, as Skitter is trying to get medical attention, it's kind of like, man, that is, you could do a whole lot with that. It's not necessarily just a offensive thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's possibility of defense there, or even like bridge building kind of thing or something. So it's pretty neat.
As we're winding down this chapter, Skitter's she realizes she's got to get some medical attention, and she's also got to reach out to Trickster and Genesis in order to prepare for their assault or their meeting at the mayor's house. And that takes us on into chapter 7. And Skitter's trying to figure out just how in the heck is she going to get medical assistance from Coil, who at this point, having Tattletales told her, wants to get her. He's out to get her. So Skitter reaches out to Tattletale. Tattletale loans her medic, Brooks, in order to give some attention to her arm. So they meet over at Skitter's base of operation, and Brooks begins to look at her arm. How real did you find this no anesthesia shoulder surgery?
Well, that's an interesting question, because going back to the previous chapter, Skitter was wondering why she didn't feel more emotion or more panic. And then going into this medical procedure, it seems like she's not feeling the kind of pain we would expect.
Right.
And so I was wondering if the fact that she has learned to kind of splinter her mind to connect with the swarm, if she's able to kind of like dissipate things by focusing more on the swarm. So the idea is that if you're just by yourself and you get hurt, then that's all on you. But if you're part of an army and an individual soldier gets hurt, then as the general, as the one kind of, you're like, oh, we've taken one critical hit over here. But it's not, the impact is not near as big to the general. It's just that, okay. So I'm wondering if somehow she's been able to shift some of her consciousness almost, I don't know, maybe this is getting too zen, but pushing it off into the swarm a little bit and kind of disassociating a little bit
There,
so
that's
that
the word I
stuff,
was looking for. Okay.
yeah, stuff that's happening to her isn't as immediate because
Hmm.
she's focusing more on the other stuff. I don't know, as speculation.
Before I go any further, I want to apologize to our listeners. Our neighbor has begun playing basketball outside, and occasionally I'm getting a pretty loud thump as I believe the basketball is hitting their backboard. So I want to apologize if any of this noise is bleeding through into our recording session. So but back to our discussion here. Okay, well, yeah, the disassociation, interesting idea. Some of the listeners may think I should know whether or not that's happening, but I can't remember if that's the case, if it is actually a thing, because the surgery did kind of take me out of it. I mean, I've had injuries throughout my athletic career, and I'm, thank God I've never dislocated a shoulder, but I mean, on a local, slicing into her arm. Okay, and then grinding on it. That kind of took me out of it a little bit. I can understand the fact that the dart has fused with the bone, so maybe there's some give there as far as like nerve pain or anything like that.
Hmm.
I may be a little too deep into it for as far as that goes, but anyway, Brooks uses Bryce to help him out. Sierra, yes, let's talk about that. Bryce has got a little attitude, and
I'll say,
Sierra comes off as scared upon occasion. Are you seeing that?
oh, definitely. Yeah. And I think it's pointed out in the chapter that, that Skitter realizes that as much as they kind of had a relationship, she and Sierra and Charlotte, before things went down with the Slaughterhouse Nine. And so maybe they thought of her as more of just a little bit different than them. She's not that much older than them, or she's about the same age. And so they thought, oh, well, she's got the costume and she's got powers and stuff. But then it's like, oh, and she stood down some of the baddest people on the planet.
Sure.
Then, yeah, I would be like, okay, I used to, like kid her that her clothes didn't fit very well, but from now on, I'm just going to kind of bow my head as she walks by. You know, I mean, we've all we've all had that kind of thing happen where it's like, oh yeah, they're just another person like me. I think about that race story that you told me about with that guy that used to play for the Broncos. I think you said he came to everybody at the beginning of the race. You guys are all athletes. You're all at a high level, and he's just like, "Oh, I'm going to introduce myself now because I'm not going to see y'all till after the race is over." And you're
Yeah.
kind of like, "What?" And then, sure enough, poof, he's just like
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah.
ghosted. And so, then all of a sudden you look at him a little different, right? He's not just like all the rest of y'all. He's just like, okay. And so I'm thinking, except now this is, you're talking life and death. And, Skitter put her life on the line over and over again and just waded in and took what they had and dealt it back even worse. And
Hmm.
so I can imagine somebody in Sierra's position being just like, oh my gosh, yeah, don't even look at her cross-eyed. She seems totally cool, but I saw what she did. You don't want her mad.
Yes. I think as far as age goes, and this is not important, I think Sierra's a little bit older than Skitter. Charlotte and Skitter are contemporaries, and then Bryce is younger. Bryce, he just don't know. Yeah, okay, the kid's lost a hand. I get him being bitter about that.
For sure.
Wildbow uses Bryce as a vehicle to convey the discomfort or the anger that maybe civilians have about capes and blaming capes in general for the state of the city.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think there's definitely that kind of invincibility of people of that age. Even though he's lost a hand, he's still saying, well, I didn't die. And then I think there's probably a little bit of that same sibling rivalry that we've seen in other brothers and sisters throughout the story.
True.
It often comes up at the most awkward times, the most awkward ways. And you and I both have sisters, so we totally can relate to that. But yeah, just his failure to grasp reality. You know, Skitter points out, well, the merchants just got totally flushed down the toilet by the Slaughterhouse-9. He's like, oh, I would have made it.
Yeah, right.
What?
Yeah, right.
You would have been one of the first ones that was just toast. So it's just, yeah, I would be pretty bitter too, though, if I lost a hand, to tell you the truth.
Sure.
Who knows what he was going through, and with his time he had with the merchants, it sounds like he was getting pretty immune to the bad aspects of it and just focusing on, well, I just party and I had a girlfriend, you know.
Yeah,
it's
and
like,
then
yeah, but
and then you came and broke everything up, and he was so far into it he couldn't see the situation for what it was. Plus, he's like 13 or 14 or whatever, and too young to understand just how perverse of a situation he was in. And as you said, the whole sibling thing on top of that was going to cloud his judgment. So while Skitter is getting operated on, she begins constructing swarm clones, more detailed looking swarm clones apparently, and she sends one of the kids off to go tell. This is where she's getting into her swarm and letting her swarm do things. She sends one of the kids off to tell a bunch of guys in a manhole cover, hey, get back to work and quit boozing it up down there.
Oh man, I try to imagine what it must be like being one of the minions, you know, and just having these crap detail jobs, you know, either you're trying to drain water or you're cleaning up garbage or picking up stuff that burned or whatever. And so I didn't really think about it, but yeah, what a better place to like totally slack off, but underground. You think, oh, cool, nobody can see us down here except the bugs. Dang it.
Right. I mean, in a TV series, I want to see what happens when these guys blow off this kid. And when Skitter sends ants in to start messing with them, they're like, yeah, well, kid, whatever, leave us alone. You know, as they keep drinking. And she's like, okay, well, I tried. Here, let me tell you, show you I mean it. And then,
please, Miss Skitter, tell me what happened to the tarantula.
Oh, Jesus. Exactly. Oh, God.
Don't you worry about that, but do your job or you will see
him again.
Again.
Little Richard Pryor there. Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
So, yeah, then we have this whole thing with Bryce giving attitude, Sierra defending Skitter to him and trying to get him to understand just what she's gone through. Meanwhile, Brooks continues to do as effective a surgery as he can on her arm. Fortunately, I guess the good news is that they had been gathering some medical supplies for a dentist who was in her employ, and that's why Brooks had as sophisticated as equipment as he did. He does. If he wasn't such a jerk, he sounds like he would be a pretty useful guy to have around. I mean, he had medical training in hospitals and other less well-supplied locations from what he was saying.
Yeah. that's kind of the best of both worlds. You got the, kind of the battlefield medic triage, just
Right.
jump right in and keep somebody from bleeding out or whatever. But you have somebody who's got more of a classical education, if you will, and is able to, if they have the time, better assess and diagnose and treat. So he does have that attitude, though. Just when you think he's being nice, then it pops up again.
Yeah. Yeah. Perian shows up and meets with Charlotte. This was this was kind of cool, where Perian and Skitter, one of Skitter's swarm clones, go for a walk, and I'm just trying to imagine this. She's having a conversation with this ghastly, ghostly looking shape made of insects. Skitter's got, let me see here, if I'm not mistaken, she's got like 190 people she counted in her area.
Mm-hmm.
She's got these swarm clones, and she's talking with work leaders in each area. The number of bugs that she's controlling is just astounding.
Well, and she's still kind of hard on herself, right? She's still saying, "Oh, I can't make them all talk and listen at the same time, so I'm having to kind of timeshare them, and swap them out." But it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's incredible, and that's what makes me think that maybe there is, with having to spread out her consciousness like that, maybe that lets her distance herself from the pain a little bit, or the panic.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, if one bee saw another bee go down, they'd be like, "Oh, well, that's a bummer, but we got the whole rest of the hive, so we'll be fine."
Yeah.
Yeah, because at the time they're dislocating her shoulder, and she's like,
Yeah.
"Give me a minute, and then I'll talk to you some more."
Yeah. Well, at least at that point, she does, upon occasion, Wildbow has her in discomfort. I
Right.
mean, shoulder dislocation. I mean, I took hard hits playing ball and whatnot, but I never dislocated my shoulder. And so just having it done on purpose just kind of creeps me out. But anyway, Perian agrees to join the alliance informally. Skitter talks to her and lays out a suggestion. Perian agrees. She she hates Skitter for basically making an attractive offer to her. She's gonna have to talk to Flechette. Skitter's gonna have to talk to Coil. And then there was that whole conversation. I don't want to say Coil was terse with her, but he had his lines that he wasn't going to cross. He wasn't going to reveal himself to Perian. He questioned whether or not them agreeing to Perian's terms would make them seem weak.
Yeah, you just never know with Coil. That's the whole wheels within wheels thing. And he makes some comment. I guess this is jumping ahead a little bit, but he makes some comment about it could have gone smoother, but I guess this will work. It's like, well, that's I don't know if but I just had like this metal bonded into my shoulder that had to be taken out with a power tool after somebody dislocated my shoulder on purpose. So sorry it wasn't smooth enough for you. But
I did the best I could with the situation. Yeah, and she also says to Coil, hey, please maybe don't tell Ballistic that I kind of went behind his back. And to which Coil's like, well, yeah, I don't want any problems between your two groups when I'm so close to my plan coming to fruition. Kind of thing. I mean, Coil's not as we say a mustache twirling villain, but I'm sure he doesn't want the two sides fighting.
Right. Well, or at least he doesn't want people to know that he does want them fighting. You never know. He seems like he's definitely one of those people that pits people against each other and manipulates them while on the ones basically talking out of both sides of his neck,
Sure.
saying to one thing, "Oh no, everything's great." And then, "Oh no, you should have heard what they said behind your back," and kind of twisting the knife in when they can. And I just have a hard time taking him at face value anytime he opens his mouth.
He's a complicated villain. You were deep in the comic books, or deeper than I was. How do you like Coil as a villain at this point in the story? What's your thoughts on Coil?
he reminds me more of somebody from science fiction than from comics. Usually
Mm.
in science fiction or in comics, the villains were pretty heavy-handed,
Mm-hmm.
except for maybe like Lex Luthor. He was he was into the machinations and trying to have these big enterprise level plans and lots of moving parts and stuff. But in the Foundation series by Asimov, he had a character called the Mule. He was I've seen artist renderings of him, and he was this, unattractive, skinny little dude, but just with this giant mind and this eye on the big picture and able to see ahead of things. And the stuff that the Foundation was built on was that there wouldn't be people like that. That everybody would kind of go about their day to day. They might see a little bit, have a little bit of a long range plan, but that the Foundation would always be ahead of those people and always be able to kind of cut them off, be proactive, be 3 steps ahead of them. But the Mule, they figured there would be somebody like that, but they couldn't account for it and couldn't plan for it. And then he popped up and almost derailed everything. And the whole idea behind the Foundation was that a little bit like this, that there was going to be a cataclysm at some point,
Mm-hmm.
and that the Foundation would try to guide humanity to be in the best position to meet that crisis when it came, so that they'd have the best chance to successfully continue.
Gotcha.
But the idea was that if all the people knew that there was the Foundation behind the scenes trying to keep them safe, then they'd actively work against it. There'd be some people that'd be like, oh, you can't tell me what to do.
Sure.
And so it was kind of this Wizard of Oz type thing almost. And then the Mule came along. So the Coil really reminds me of the Mule. It's just somebody that knows that there's something out there and is going to actively plan to come up with a better strategy and that puts him on top.
Gotcha. And that moves us on into the third bonus interlude. And we start off meeting Rebecca. And she's a young girl, early teenager or mid teens, I guess. And she's in a hospital and she appears to be dying of cancer. She gets visited by the doctor and her assistant. Again, this was another one of these well done intros into an interlude where you have absolutely no idea who this person is or where we're going with it.
Definitely. Yeah, this seemed like one of those scenes out of a medical drama that you'd watch where it's just like, oh, here's, another kid that is hoping for a miracle, some kind of diagnosis or whatever, but has pretty much given up hope and the family's given up hope. And how does that fit into Worm? This doesn't make any sense at all.
Right. And I should point out that this is back in August of 1986, right? Right when capes are beginning early on and beginning to appear in the world.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And that made me even question this more because it was like, well, there's only so many people that could show up that are even related to this story at all. So, yeah, like you said, where is this going?
The doctor has a interesting proposal for Rebecca, and she says, "Hey, would you like the opportunity to help me in this grand quest to make superheroes?" She lays out to her the dangers involved, but Rebecca's terminal. She's dying. Becca, I guess she's called. She's dying, and the doctor offers her a chance to live if she's willing to drink one of her elixirs. Hard to say what I'd do in that scenario. I'd probably go for it too.
Oh, I would, sure, for sure, especially at that age. You got your whole life ahead of you, and Wildbow does a great job of detailing some of that, of what Becca's missing out on, what she'll never experience, and she's just like, yeah, this is. I mean, she's been ingesting poison actively for however many years she's been fighting this and dealing with hair loss and all that stuff. It's like, so I might look like a tree on the outside, but I'll be healthy. Let's do it. I mean, but can't be worse than being, 75 pounds, bald, and, having sores in my mouth. So
Right. And every time, every touch from a loved one brings pain because your skin is so sensitive and so forth.
Exactly. Yeah.
The next day, we come to a scene where apparently Rebecca's taken the formula and she's better. She's not a monster. She's actually feeling better about herself. The doctor is very pleased. Rebecca's wondering, hey, what can I do? And at this point, this is apparently very early on in the doctor's efforts. And at this point, all she's doing, yeah, the quote is from Rebecca, what can I do? And the doctor says, I have yet to start categorizing results. For the time being, I'm playing a game of battleship, creating what I can and logging the results. And so yeah, this was this was early on in the efforts of Cauldron. It was a heck of a chance that Rebecca took here. Believable as far as the story goes, but it was a heck of a chance.
Right. And yeah, I think it was pretty brilliant that the doctor approached this way in the hospital setting. They try out experimental drugs all the time on cancer patients. It's like, well, what have you got to lose? And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
my best friend from high school went to Duke for experimental treatments on his brain tumor that he had. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, yeah, well, I'll take a shot.
Sure.
He was only 40 at the time. So it's like, yeah, my kids are little, I want to be around. I mean, unfortunately, it didn't work, but,
Mm.
and so, yeah, at that age, why not, roll the dice. And it just seems like it's another drug trial. It's, she's kind of like, all right, I didn't know it was all this. But yeah, I also like the way Wildbow talked briefly about the trigger event. That she saw the trigger vision a little bit. She can't grasp it, and it slips away really fast.
He touches on it again.
Yeah, so that was cool. I like that being thrown in there.
So maybe I should save this question for. No, I'm gonna go ahead and bring this up now because I'll forget. Um, so the doctor approaches Rebecca. This is in the early days of capes, and she's somehow gotten a hold of material to create these capes. You want to speculate?
Huh. Um, so you mean to create the formulas and stuff? Or
Yeah. I mean, we have,
okay. Um,
yeah, broadly speaking.
so yeah, I'm guessing that there's, and we've talked about this before, like in the idea of bone saw and the insight that her power gives her
Mm-hmm.
on how to combine bodies and stuff, that there's probably somebody there that has, maybe they were triggered at the same time or around the same time as somebody else was triggered before that person. And then they saw the kind of changes. They had some kind of insight into what happened on a
Gotcha.
biological, chemical level to that person. And maybe they were already a chemist or something or a biologist. And they started then, all right, well, let's see if we can synthesize something.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot we had touched on this briefly in the past. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. So maybe some kind of a medical tinker like Bonesaw and someone with a chemistry background or something along those lines and said, I bet if I put this and this together and maybe we can synthesize powers.
Sure, yeah, and also like along the lines of Mannequin, he was a super bright engineer who was trying to come up with systems that would allow people to survive in extreme climates or whatever, and then he turned that once he got triggered into making himself invulnerable or as invulnerable as possible, and so I'm guessing it's something somebody was already doing research like that, and
Mm-hmm.
then got triggered. So
Rebecca notices several things. First of all, she realizes how much faster her mind is processing, not processing things, not just because she was being affected by the chemo and how her cognitive abilities had been slowed down and affected by the medication, but she realizes, no, I'm actually feeling and thinking better. And at one point, she starts walking toward the door, and by the time she finishes crossing the room, she's floating. She drags her hands through a concrete wall, and the doctor offers her a proposal and says, "Hey, what do you say? What do you say you accompany me for a couple of years? Because I need another bodyguard. I've got this girl here, but I could always use someone else around." And Rebecca looks down at the concrete dust in her hands and agrees to this. So as we move on, the next date that comes up is May of 1988. And this is where we get the name Alexandria. Rebecca's Cape name is Alexandria. And we have a meeting, what appears to be the first meeting between the Doctor, Legend, Eidolon, Hero, and Alexandria. How did you like this scene as it played out? We've got these arguably the most powerful capes on the planet, and Alexandria has a suggestion for them.
Well, before we get into that,
Yeah.
Professor Manton was there too.
Oh, right. I liked that tie-in.
Like, whoa, all right. That's a name I recognize.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like some pieces are starting to fall into place. It's like, oh, well, it makes sense that he would be there. They've talked about his research and stuff. And
right, because Legend had seen, was it Legend saw the cauldron symbol on the hand? This was back when they were fighting at the library in Brockton Bay. And right. Siberian was carrying him. And Legend saw that symbol on his hand. So we've had that alluded to.
Right. But now we kind of see the beginning of that. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. Then they start talking about how, and it's been a couple of years. And so, and the Doctor had already said there were about 50 capes 2 years earlier. So you figure there are more and more coming online. There's more stories going on. And sure enough, Alexandria's had some notable battles.
Mm-hmm.
And she's got the attention a little bit of these top tier folks. And yeah, she's got this proposal, and it makes sense. It's like we mentioned earlier, power corrupts. And so as people come online with superpowers, it's kind of like, well, I can, use this to thwart criminals, or I could be a really good criminal. and the world owes me, gosh darn it, So she gives her pitch, and it's very interesting that she's trying to realize they've got a band together.
Yeah, because at one point they're doing the math, and the rate of natural occurring parahumans is going to outpace the Doctor's ability to create them. They note that the trigger events tend to create disturbed or more criminals than heroes. So eventually, hey, they're going to get outpaced, and there's going to be a bunch of criminals per hero. And so she lays out this suggestion, this initiative, create the protectorate. They submit somewhat. Yeah, they submit to the government's yoke, albeit they know that the government will realize that if the four of them banded together, they could push back. Like, I imagine if it was like an American president saying, "Here, go over here and wipe out this country for me," and they'd be like, "No, we're not doing that." Kind of an unlawful order, kind of like military personnel wouldn't just go commit genocide on a bunch of people. But that was good. The Doctor wasn't her initiative. Alexandria didn't seek to be in charge of the new team. She wanted to be the civilian, the boss of the civilian branch, and to help shepherd, as she put it, legislation through to get things done, to help stand up this organization. Pretty effective idea.
I definitely agree. Yeah, it's if you can kind of have a representative in on both sides of the equation, then you've got a lot better chance of it coming out the way you want it to. One other thing that was mentioned here that I wanted to comment on, though. What was that? Well, I thought it was kind of funny that they bagged on her for costume a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, seriously? That's pretty lame.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it works.
Oh, that was it. So yeah, you were talking about how the trigger event. Yeah, so I totally blew by that earlier, but it's typically a very horrible trauma.
Right.
And in one of the earlier interludes, the doctor said that depending on how mentally distraught or emotionally distraught you are when the trigger event happens, often that coincides with the outcome, how bad the outcome is. Either,
Yeah.
you end up looking bad, or kind of leaning toward an evil emotional state. And so, given these trigger events tend to be so horrible, it's not surprising that more of them are turning out to be bad characters.
Yeah, and let's tie that back all the way back to one of the earlier arcs when the team is first assembling, when the Undersiders are first assembling. Remember, they were out at the marketplace and they had their first discussion about their own trigger events, and Regent or Alec kind of explained why everybody was hesitant to share because, hey, this was the one of the worst events in my life I happened to be going through at the time I triggered. So you could tie that into this whole situation.
Exactly. And not just the worst time in somebody's life, but a arguably horrible time on any scale. The stuff that they talk about is just like, oh my gosh, it's just, well, and then, yeah, tying it back to another one with the merchants where they're trying to get
Oh
people to
yeah.
trigger by having a giant Donnybrook and fight to the death. And so it's just, yeah,
So it's no surprise that people who naturally trigger might have might
they might come
tend
out
to go ahead.
they might come out kind of damaged, yeah,
Yeah.
on
Okay.
an emotional level.
One other thing, reaching back, and I'm sorry I didn't remember this at the time. Shatterbird was the person in the nine who alluded to having someone having bought her powers. You remember that?
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
I think it might have been during our second summary episode, and you mentioned we were trying to figure out who in the Slaughterhouse Nine could have been a Cauldron Cape, and
Mm.
Crawler had come up, and the conversation went a different direction. But no, it was Shatterbird. She had alluded to it during her conversation with Hookwolf, I think it was, and he was trying to call her out, and she had said something along the lines of, "I guess the men who paid for my power should get a refund," or something like that.
Yeah, and then there was also the other one with Battery.
Well, we know battery's a Cauldron Cape.
Right, but they told her she had to, as her third favor, make sure two people survive.
Yes.
And so we got to figure that maybe they were Cauldron folks.
And yeah, that was, oh, right.
It was Shatterbird and Siberian, right?
It now see, I'm mad. I can't remember. I can confirm Siberian. You may be right. It might have been Shatterbird. I can't remember. Somebody let me know. Sorry, I don't remember that one off the top of my head.
It's tough to keep all these different threads straight,
Bro.
sure.
Holy cow, man. Holy cow. So as we're moving further into this interlude here, everyone agrees. They listen to Alexandria's presentation. They ask some good questions. Legend is on the ball. He's asking some good questions about the whole situation. They agree to keep an open mind about it. Meanwhile, as the meeting is winding up, the doctor has the doormaker use his power. How about that one?
This was very cool. Yeah, everybody's kind of blown away by all of a sudden seeing another Earth, and the doctor saying, "Yeah, this is where I'm going to hang out." It's like, well, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Doormaker paid a price for it, but
yes, he did.
that's pretty incredible power he has.
Yeah, and so now we get an understanding of how people are being shuttled to and from Cauldron's base of operations.
Right.
And we move on to our next time interlude and our timestamp, if you will, on the story, and that's in December of 1992. How did you like this? This was bananas. We get our first introduction to Behemoth.
Yeah, I mean, after what we went through with Leviathan, I figured he'd be pretty. All the Endbringers would be pretty mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
But this was a great description of it. I was thinking kind of like Crawler. As I read through this, just a big thing that can take lots of punishment and maybe can regenerate and has some stuff, and then it's like all of a sudden all sorts of other stuff happens, and I'm like, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
How does this thing ever? It's like some of those scenes from Jurassic Park where you're just like, oh geez, it's smart too. That's not fair. Come on.
Right. And let me jump back real quick and point out that this was one of their fears, that somehow a natural trigger event would eventually create a person or create a cape as powerful as the members of the top members of the Protectorate, and that's what Alexander is believing to the case to be here.
Exactly. Yeah, this is something that this was their worst case scenario, and they're living it out now.
Yeah, and he is the first Endbringer. He's what she calls a dynakinetic. The Manson effect, he can bypass that. He uses sonic power, lightning, kinetic energy, and it spooks legend. I like that description of how when he tells Hero to call for backup, and there was just the slightest tremor in his voice. Hey, I'm not going to shame him. You go there, you think you're going to be doing, I believe it was earthquake rescue of some kind, and then this thing comes crawling from beneath the earth and begins to slaughter members of your team. So legend being a little shook. I hear you, bro.
Well, I love the term applied to this, diakinetic. That's a really neat way of describing it. But the wheels begin turning for me. How would you stop it then? It's like,
that's what Alexandria asked. How do we even fight that?
Right, because you would have to find a way to get it away from all energy. And so it seems like if you could put it in stasis somehow, that might be a way to do it. But the thing is so big, it doesn't even seem like that would be possible.
And this is the first encounter with the first Endbringer. So not having a gameplay, right? That's completely understandable.
For sure. Yeah.
And so Wildbow decides not to give us the description on what happens further, how the fight ended. Instead, we jump ahead to January of 1993, and we're presented with a scene of the newly formed Protectorate, the top members of the Protectorate taking the oath and initiating the organization. This was a really cool scene. I mean, we get the horror of the attack from Behemoth before that, and then we get the solemn swearing in ceremony immediately after. This was good. I like this.
Well, and it points out that oftentimes you have to have a giant crisis. It's like in the alien attack kind of movies. The only way the Earth ever unites is if we all have a common foe. And so in order for the government to accept this kind of deal, they have to be faced with something that, all right, there's no way we can combat this. We're given an option where these people are willing to put their lives on the line to try to fight it. So, all right, I guess we'll make the deal. So I think Wildbow did this ordering intentionally because, yeah, the government had to kind of wake up and smell the coffee and realize this is the best deal we can come up with.
Especially if the members, the heroes, were willing to place themselves under the jurisdiction and control of the government, of the civilian government. So yeah, you can imagine, if you will, as you're talking about the timeline, maybe there were some fence sitters about the whole capes under governmental control kind of thing, and then suddenly Behemoth shows up, and the next thing you know what? Everybody's like, "Hey, you know what? Maybe we ought to get together, and make this thing happen."
Yeah, let's have a beer, and I think this will work out. But yeah, there's and shows like The Watchmen did a great job of portraying that, because there's and X-Men, there's going to be fear from the normals that they're just going to be second class citizens, that the parahumans will take over and it'll just be enslavement almost, that they'll just the normal people will just be second class citizens, serfs, exactly. So it takes some kind of wake up call for them to agree to do this, make this deal in spite of their fears.
The next time stamp that we get is September of 2000. So few years later, and we get this section of the interlude introducing the Siberian. What a horrific event. From the time that we get the description of the Siberian's victim to what happened to Alexandria. Yeah, Alexandria is an invincible, or darn near invincible, individual. And Siberian swiped at her and took her eye and the chunk of her face.
Well, and Alexandria also has, superpower.
Sure.
And she punches Siberian and Siberian doesn't move. And now we know why, but yeah, it's kind of a huge understatement when they say, "Oh, we'd underestimated the opponent." It's like, you think?
You are the four most powerful people in the Protectorate. They finally get this chick cornered, and she just messes with them and obliterates Hero in the process.
Yeah, she just tears him in half, and it's pretty gruesome. And they thought they knew that, oh, well, yeah, the Endbringers are really bad, but they, they're kind of just out there. They don't show up, they're almost animalistic, they don't have coordinated attacks, whatever. But now they're faced with something that's almost as bad as an Endbringer, but does have a human intelligence behind it.
Right. Hero is killed. We don't know how many other individuals died during this fight, but Siberian lays waste to the PRT squad. She's throwing vans around. This is apparently the first time the containment foam has been deployed. Alexandria is injured, but she lives. And the next day, the doctor comes to visit her, and that's where the two of them discuss the fact that this is William Manton, or pardon me, the Siberian herself isn't Manton, but he's gone rogue. He gave a formula to his daughter, and she reacted in a bad way. We don't know exactly what happened to her, but his daughter couldn't handle the formula. He knew he couldn't hide it from Cauldron, and so he took something and bolted, and the result was the Siberian.
Yeah, and that's kind of the danger when you let the genie out of the bottle, right? Is that some people might use it for the wrong things. And we were just flipping through streaming the other day and came across The Fly.
Which version? The original or the Goldblum?
No, with Goldblum. Yeah, the one that you and I watched back in the day. And I still remember somebody telling me that they had to cut some of the scenes because people threw up in the theater. It was so grim.
Yeah.
But yeah, here you have this person that's just like, all right, well, I'm going to do it. And then, things go horribly wrong. So Siberian is just creepy on a whole nother level.
Yeah. Manton, for whatever reason, whether he's trying to buy his daughter's love because the bad situation with his ex-wife or whatever, he gives her this formula. Something horrific happens to her. and he bolts. And so now the daughter is in the care of the doctor. The doctor makes a proposal that, well, maybe we should just leave Manton be. And Alexandria is not having it, and I don't blame her.
For sure. Yeah, I would be throwing things, and it sounds like Alexandria almost did. But then, yeah, the doctor really kind of shows her true colors a little bit. That she knows she's kind of being a puppeteer here,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe she's getting a little big for her britches, and instead she's not happy with just manipulating one person at a time. Now she's like, well, what if I could have everybody manipulated all at the same time, and I could pit them against each other? And yeah,
You think so? I mean,
well,
her thing was, and pardon me if I'm missing your point. I'm sorry if I'm missing your point. Her thing seemed to be let Manton alone and leave the Siberian out there in order to drive people to join the protectorate. Was that your point?
yeah, exactly. So if you think of like there have been a number of movies that are similar to that, where the scientist creates some kind of bioweapon so that they can drive the sales of their vaccine, and make a boatload of money off of it. So
So
one way to
she's Ozymandias is what she's
yeah,
playing. Okay.
yeah, she's trying to guarantee her funding by making sure there's a boogeyman or boogie Siberian out there,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll keep throwing money at her and keep letting her tinker with stuff and try to make better and better things. And
Okay.
because I'm sure there were, well, I'm not sure. I'm guessing that there had to be some kind of oversight or concessions made on the part of the doctor when they paired up with the government. If
Whoa,
depending on
whoa,
how much the
whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on here.
cauldron isn't known by the government, just Alexandria and those folks.
That is correct.
Okay, all right. I was reading too much into that then.
So that shouldn't be any kind of a spoiler.
No, I think you're right. I was hyperextending my imagination there. But anyway, Alexandria knows about both, right? The deal with the
Right.
government through the
Yeah.
protectorate and the cauldron,
Mm-hmm.
and she's trying to be the best she can be, and she's going along with the doctor because that's how she got her powers, and she sees the benefit of it. But I think she knows there's always the possibility of things going a little sideways with a private sector, so to speak, research think tank type thing. And here the doctor seems to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit, and Alexander's like, oh, hell no.
Right. Okay, I got you now. I got you. So we move on to the next time instance, and it's April of 2008. Alexandria is in some poor, war-torn location, and she's looking for individuals who are victims of this battle. She's walking through this battleground. There's some corpses. And she comes across a young man who's been injured, probably fatally, and she asks him if he wants to live. He thinks she's an angel at first, and she says, "No, I'm not an angel." And he says, "Yes, I want to live." And so she swoops him up and takes him to Cauldron's testing facility. So, this just was not cool. I mean, yeah, okay. So she was dying of cancer originally, and this was offered to her as a way to save her life. But now they're going around to wherever plagues are running rampant or wherever there's war and people who have been seriously injured, they're offering them a chance to live and make guinea pigs out of them. How'd that make you feel?
Wildbow kind of eases us into it, as you were kind of implying. It's like, how do you cook a frog? Oh yeah, sure, save a young girl who's dying of cancer. But then, yeah, they show he writes that Alexandria's walking along and there's 30 cells with these people in. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just one girl, and so obviously Enterprise is ramped up quite a bit, you know, and they're trying to crank them through, and but they're still, it's not like they perfected it, you know, there's still some monsters. And so it's kind of like, well, you know, it's tough to not feel like a hypocrite and say, "Oh, this is horrible," because at the beginning we were like, "Oh yeah, they saved the
Yeah.
girl," but this seems pretty messed up. And then yeah, the typical way I go off on a thing is it's like, well, is the doctor causing unrest in various areas so there'll be more people get blown up, that so
Mm,
she's kind of, you know, stirring the pot to make sure she has plenty of subjects, you know, so
who
it can get more
knows?
and more horrible. Yeah.
And so we see where possibly where Gregor and Neuter and whoever else,
Right.
how they came to be Case 53s, or someone like Weld as well. So let's not forget
Yeah.
those other individuals who have come at earlier parts of the story. And now we've got Alexandria bringing this seriously injured young man to this facility, putting him in a cell, and as she says, administering poison with a smile, much as the case when she was terminal with her cancer. Good callback by Wildbow in that moment, tying it all together.
Definitely. Yeah.
Oh, and let's not walk past the fact before we move on, that these folks are all these test subjects were all in cells without doors, so or gates or anything. Something's convinced them to stay in their cells and not mess with anybody as they go walking by. So just hang on to that thought.
Okay.
And the final part of this interlude is where we get the meeting with Legend out at the oil derrick from a different point of view. We get it from Alexandria's point of view. This is the one where, if you recall, Legend had his lie detector that he had borrowed from Kid Win. Again, another very effective thing. We know how Legend saw it. Now we see the other side of the table here. There's a whole lot of stuff going on here. Skipping around a little bit, Eidolon, his powers are waning for some reason or other. His powers manifested information to him. That's how he found out what Alexandria and the doctor were up to begin with. And so Legend is on the outside of this whole thing looking in. He's got suspicions, but as far as they know, he doesn't know all the pieces, but they realize eventually he's going to probably figure it all out. Did you like this perspective on the other side of the meeting?
It was a lot different than I expected. You know, when we saw it from Legend's side, it just seemed like kind of big business, or the doctor not wanting to lose Cauldron, that kind of thing. But then when we see it from this side, it's like, no, they're actually trying to make sure things don't come to this doomsday scenario. And so it's kind of like, you know, when you're trying to roll up a character in D
Mm-hmm.
and D, and you just keep re-rolling, trying to get all 17s and 18s. You know, they've been bringing people in over and over again, trying to find somebody that will be this person, like Coil, somebody who can see the future and be a strategist. You know, have all the right pieces that can try to navigate through. You know, kind of like Ender's Game. You know, this
Oh
person who's
yeah.
got just the right balance of everything to be able to be ruthless enough to do what needs to be done, but not be so ruthless that they're gonna just don't care how it goes, you know. And so yeah, it kind of caught me by surprise. I didn't expect it to go this way.
As I was saying, they got a couple of things going on here. There's talk of this Terminus project. There's talk of how Coil fits into their plans. There's now this whole end of the world scenario with Jack, and how that's apparently doing something to their timeline for the Terminus project. And on top of that, the fact that they know that Legend is suspecting what they're all up to. So there's a whole lot of moving parts in this last little section of the interlude.
It had my head swirling, that's for sure.
as I said earlier, let's not forget the fact that for some reason something's going on with Idolan, and he's apparently losing power. But the doctor assures him that they'll come up with a solution for that. So time will tell. And that moves us on to the final chapter that we're going to cover in this episode, and that's chapter 8. And we pick up with Skitter as she's meeting up with, oh, pardon me. Before we get there, I've jumped ahead a little bit. This is where actually Skitter talks with Coil and then explains the situation with Perion becoming a member of their alliance, and Coil does that whole, yeah, okay, well, yeah, maybe let me think about it kind of thing. Then we move on to Skitter meeting up with Trickster and Genesis. Yeah. And another point, Skitter says she's prepared to die. Thoughts?
Yeah, it almost felt to me like they portray in some war movies, where it's just soldiers are going through the meat grinder and it seems like it's never ending, and you seem like you make some headway and then you slide back down the hill or whatever, or you get pushed out of a position that you just succeeded in taking over, and you're not getting the support. She just found out somebody's supposedly on her team or her side is actively going to try to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
And so you start feeling pretty hopeless, and she's been doing her best to try to come up with strategies and try to work through things, and stuff still keeps getting kind of thwarted. So I could see where she could be kind of out of hope and
Fatalistic.
yeah, fatalistic. That's a great way to put it.
As she's doing this self-reflection, we are again reminded that she hasn't gotten in touch with her father in a while, and as she's thinking about what if she did die, and I was irritated at how selfish she seemed, where it almost came off to me like, well, yeah, he'll be sad, but he'll get over it if I die. And Tattletale will come up with some excuse. That I don't know if that's Wildbow's intent. I think I'm still covered or still shaded by the fact that at this point in the story during my first read, up until this point, I was still hoping she'd turn and return to the light side, if you will. And I'm pretty sure at this point I began to realize, well, no, that's just not happening. At least at this point in the story, she may never get back. She's full villain. Yeah, if I die, I die. Gee, Dad, I'm sorry. I was a villain. I'm sure Lisa will come up with a story. I'm sure Perion can take care of things in my territory. I mean, yeah, she's doing this for Dinah. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I don't know if I think she's being selfish in her thinking or what here. Help me out here.
Yeah, this one's hard to tease out what's going on here. I mean, I'm sure you can remember times. I know I can remember times when I was very unhappy with my parents when I was Taylor's age,
Sure.
and I hadn't gone through any of this stuff that Taylor's gone through. So, you've got the usual kind of teenage coming of age stuff.
Of
It's like,
course.
well, I want to be in control, but I'm not really in control. But to top it off, she's got powers. So she's got a lot more options, but then the world's falling apart around her ears. So it's really hard for me to try to project myself into that. It's just too foreign to me. But I know I've always thought, one of the tropes that's used in action movies and comics and stuff is just that, well, we can't threaten the hero, so we'll threaten their family.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, well, why don't more heroes just kind of, either cut ties to their family? Like in Mission Impossible, he basically was still married, but he didn't connect with his wife at all. He just kind of kept an eye on her. Why doesn't that thing happen more? Or this, where people become very callous and just kind of disconnect from families, knowing that it's better if the family doesn't know and people don't know, don't risk getting it found out.
Yeah, maybe that's.
So I don't know. Maybe I'm giving her too much credit.
Man, yeah. I don't know. That's something to consider. I can't give away too much, but I just think reflect back on where I was at this point in the story, and my disappointment that it all feels hopeless as far as holding out hope that her and her dad were going to reconnect. So Skitter hops on Atlas later on as she prepares to meet with Trickster for them harassing the mayor, and she gets to the area early where the mayor's home is, and she begins constructing swarm clones. She's gotten really good at this, and these things are really convincing to the point where the one she walks up to, or actually she flies a swarm clone on Atlas over to Trickster and Genesis, and they don't realize it's her until Trickster gets ready to try to use his power on her.
It's again that splintering of the mind, where she's really able to spread out and do all sorts of stuff. I mean, and at first all the clones looked alike. Now she's got some that look like her carrying the laptop, and then she's got one that. So yeah, it's getting more and more refined. She's getting better and better control on it, and then she also covers herself with bugs, so she looks like a clone.
Exactly.
So she's trying to cover her bases here, knowing that somebody's out to get her.
Yeah. So her paranoia is in overdrive, and it's not paranoia, or what's that saying? Just because
it's
you're
not
paranoid
when people are really out to get you.
Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah. So she's taken a lot of precautions there, the multiple swarm clones, and then, as you said, covering herself in bugs to make herself look like the swarm clones. And then the last line of defense, although she probably not going to put 100% reliability on it, is her costume, her spider silk costume. Having gotten stabbed earlier in the day, she realizes that it's not without limits. It can protect her just so much. She meets up with those two, and they discuss their plans for assaulting the mayor's home. Genesis is in a particular form, kind of a ghostly looking lady. Trickster is going to deal with the cops. He's kind of irritated that she's not there in person when he realizes that she's using her swarm clones. And then that was kind of cool. She has the swarm clone that's with those two point to another swarm clone and say, "Oh yeah, I'm over there." And he's like, "Oh, okay, all right." Well, she's really being alert for possible assault from any corner.
Yeah, and she's on edge about Trickster too.
Yeah.
Trickster is she says, "Give me a second." Genesis takes off, and then Trickster kind of starts bagging on.
Yeah.
And from her interactions with Ballistic earlier, she's like, maybe you're not all as cool as I thought, and now you're being kind of a toad. So what's going on here?
Well, see, yeah. So at this point, one gets the impression that perhaps Trickster doesn't realize the low esteem that Ballistic holds him in.
Right. Exactly. It just seems like he's a little tone deaf overall.
Yeah.
She says, "You seem a little more hostile." And he says, "Do I?" And it's like, is he saying it like sarcastic, like he knows he's being that way? Or is he like, "Oh, I am? Really?"
Mm-hmm.
So.
And so, yeah, the two of them, after Genesis, her projection takes off and prepares to assault the house. The two of them have that conversation, and they kind of verbally fence back and forth, and then the assault begins. Skitter does use her power to do a head count of individuals inside the home. Genesis bursts through a door or window. Skitter has her swarm flowing behind them. Trickster teleports over to the house, and they begin to try to intimidate the mayor and his family. But something doesn't feel right. Skitter's there trying to get a handle on why the family isn't as terrified as she thinks they should be.
Yeah, and I think that's another example of Trickster just not being good at picking up social cues. He's the one kind of leading this, right? And it seems like he had the plan to intimidate them. People who use intimidation as a tool tend to recognize pretty quickly when it's not working. And so it's like, man, why isn't he getting this? That they don't seem like they're quivering in fear here. But yeah, Skitter luckily picks up on it, tries to get Trickster's attention, and I don't know what he's doing, but he's not paying attention.
Well, yeah, he misses the point there. He teleports the little girl, one of the daughters, over to him, puts a gun to her head. I mean, that was kind of a punk move. I mean, I'm with Skitter as far as definitely, hey, all we're going to do is go in there and intimidate people. We aren't looking to hurt anybody. And then he does that. What if it hadn't been for Triumph yelling and knocking and then sending the table over at him, which was extremely cool. What was he gonna do to that little girl? So he yells that punches Trickster back into a wall. Then he yells again and sends a table at him, and he's able to fine tune this use of his power because he hits Trickster and not his kid sister.
I hadn't realized that. That's right. Yeah, it's very directed. So that's pretty cool. And they had gone over it before they had gone in, that, hey, we're trying to convince the mayor of something.
Yeah.
So we don't want him showing up to Washington and looking like he's about to wet his pants because he's so stressed out about stuff. We want him on our side. And here, the first thing Trickster does is put a gun to his daughter's head. So, but yeah, Triumph does have kind of a surgical strike there. I hadn't realized that.
Yeah, and as we're heading toward the end of this chapter, Skitter, seeing the situation going to pieces, comes from her concealed location, begins sprinting toward the house, realizing that she has to go rescue Trickster, because if she leaves him, then that's going to cause friction between the two groups. Coil could fire her. Trickster, she feels, is the kind of guy who, he just might punk out and give up everything in order to save his skin. So she really has no choice, I think, other than to go and try to save him.
Yeah, she's definitely between a rock and a hard place here. And yeah, the same kind of thoughts occurred to me as I was reading this. It's like, is this what Coil planned all along? Is this why he sent these folks?
Good question.
I don't know. That seems like way too many variables. So I don't think it's Coil's doing necessarily, but I'm guessing he knew that this wasn't going to go very smoothly by sending these people, and that he'll have something else waiting for Skitter when she thinks she's pulled everybody's bacon out of the fire and things are okay. That's when the betrayal will strike. That's my prediction.
All right. And I think we will leave it on that, on your prediction there, bud. So, folks, this brings us to the end of part 3. Join us for our final part of our Arc 15 review. And at that time, Andy will announce his choice for key characters of the arc. And I would like to remind my buddy that, this is another beefy arc. So if you want to do more than one key character, there's no law against doing that. So keep that in mind.
Okay. I will definitely consider that.
All right. All right, folks. Thanks for being here once again. We hope everyone is enjoying the start of the summer. Stay hydrated. And until next time, take care.
I definitely hope, the folks that have family in school, you guys are getting to get out on vacations. Even though I'm long past school age, I still miss those days of time away from school for 3 months at a time. But those of you who get to enjoy it, I pray that you're having a good time, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks for joining us in this podcast. We hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. If not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and we'll hope you'll return. Music is by the band YYNOT from their self-titled debut CD. You can find more in the link down below. Catch you later.